Um, Something happened to me when I was coming here. I lost my way, found myself going back to Abuja from Abuja, and eventually stopped somewhere and found out that, yeah, I was 60 kilometers away from my destination, but going in the wrong direction. So I made a detour, came to Jos, went to my designated accommodation, and found a guy waiting for me, and I asked him, who is here? And he says, the pastor, the imam. And I was like, okay, I'm the devil. I didn't know what I was doing there. I had a similar invitation about 2 years ago to go to Saudi Arabia and discuss peace with the King of Saudi Arabia. Of course, you know what that means. And when I saw the list, there were 45 imams, 2 traditional rulers, and 3 journalists. And I was supposed to lead the journalists. So I went to the ambassador and I said, why am I going with these people? They are not my people. I don't want to be part of that. And he said, no, you know, you're a journalist, and you know, journalists do certain things, so I'd love you to be part of them so that you can probably put them aright when they're going astray and help them to understand what the King of Saudi Arabia was saying. And I'm like, put imams aright? I mean, these are the kind of conflicts that you come across when you go through the rudiments of life day to day in a country like this, called Nigeria. Now, I met the convener of this organization, and she told me to come and talk about the role of the media in keeping the peace in a time of escalating global conflict. And I thought, this is a misnomer. I can't be talking about global conflict today, because what we need is global peace. And I started breaking this down, the role of the media. Yes, media has a role everywhere. I read a certain quote from the chief of staff of the New York Times, which says, journalists are intellectual prostitutes. And I thought, aren't we all? What are lawyers? What are doctors today in Nigeria? What are accountants, like His Excellency said? What are bus conductors? What are drivers? Everybody is a prostitute because nobody sticks to the truth. So it's a bunch of mistruths. As I'm talking to you at this material moment, there are soldiers all over in Numa. I wanted to prepare a speech and come here with, you know, footages and pictures and imagery and everything, but it wouldn't happen. I called the guy in Numa and I said, please go around town, take pictures of that place and get it back to me. And he says, no, there are soldiers everywhere. I can't do pictures in Numan anymore. Isn't that sad? We are here exporting peace from a city which is ravaged in war. Someone said that about Nigeria. We're exporting what we do not produce. We're selling the wrong rhetoric all the time. Because here are young people in a smart world. Probably about 100 or so of you are selected because you are smart people, using smart cards, working with smartphones, but doing dumb things. Why would you see somebody on the streets and begin to assume that because he is Muslim, or he is Fulani, or he is Hausa, or he is Buram, Yoruba, Igbo, and so on, and just assume that he's your enemy? How do you know that's not the same guy who is going to pull you out of a well if you lose a step? Because we're human beings. So I'd rather we talk about, you know, what binds us together as a people. Yesterday I was driving in town, and the guy who was taking me around was Biram. And I've seen this guy a lot of times whenever I got to Jos and just relied on him for movement. Only yesterday he asked me, he said, Oga, can I have your phone number? I said, why? He said, oh, I farm vegetables. I hear, since you are in Abuja, you are coming here all the time, you are probably going to help me find conditions or areas where I can sell my vegetables in Abuja. And I said, my friend, everybody I know has told me I don't know how to do anything but journalism. So forget it. I don't have that kind of contact. Then he said, anyway, can I have your number? I gave him my number. He gave me his. And then he said, do you know I don't know your name? I said, my name is Barkindo. He said, Kaifula Anine. I come from Numan. Yes, I come from Numan. And I'm sure when I told him I came from Numan, do you know he's Bachama? And we lived just across the streets from each other. We never knew each other. Probably he was young when I was, in school. I could shout at him from my bedroom, and he could reply back. We can have a silent conversation without anybody knowing. But we're fighting today for no just cause. When I was growing up in Numan, a teacher called us by the side and asked a friend of mine and I what we wanted to become when we grew up. And the guy said he wanted to be the Secretary General of the United Nations. I hardly knew what that was at the time. And I said, I want to be a journalist, go around the world, take pictures, and eventually come back and become a columnist in a newspaper. By the time I was 24, I was working in the Daily Times, and my editor called me one day and said, hey, Barkindo, do you have a picture with your Hausa cap on you? I'm like, well, then I was probably understudying them, trying to organize process too. So I said, no, all my pictures are in jeans and khakis. He said, please, go and get a jumper and a cap, put it on, do a picture, and come back. I said, why? He said, because you are going to start writing a column. I couldn't believe it. When I wrote my first column and my picture appeared in the newspaper, I was like, is this the future? Because that's all I hoped for. Now remember, that same young man that was with me at the time that we were asked what we wanted to become had told me something very painful. I hope many of you understand Hausa here. He said, don't ubanka dan talaka da kudin wa zaka je America ka zagaye duniya kana daukan hoto. Because his father was a former divisional officer, if you know what that means. That's DO, was a very big man. He was probably bigger than the governor today. And, he had everything. And he thought I didn't have anything, so I couldn't aspire to anything. But I'll tell you what, sometime in 1997, I had started going around the world, taking pictures and coming back and putting, and I lived in Area 11 in Abuja, which was, I think, much bigger than what you can imagine Numan would be. Numan used to be a town of only 1 square mile with 4 secondary schools inside, spread across the town. So you see, from 1 square mile, now I lived in Area 11 with a house of my own, can drive my car, can go to an office, can smoke cigarettes, and drink beer. And this aspiring Secretary General of the United Nations was still struggling, squatting in his brother's house, coming to my house every now and then to eat my lunch. So one day, he said, he came to my house, took the key, went in, tried to find something to eat, couldn't find it. And when I popped in, he said, my friend, there's no food in your house. I'm like, yeah, because I'm not here. When I'm here, there will be food. Then he looked around again and said, okay, what do you want to eat? I said, no, you're not going to eat my lunch today. I'm fed up of feeding the Secretary General of the United Nations. What I'm trying to tell you here is that once you aspire to things, make sure your goals are modest, because some goals are not realistic, for God's sake. I mean, you see people in government, you think they're not doing anything right. What are you, who is criticizing government, doing? And I'll tell you, I used to be a critic. I wrote on the back pages of This Day, New Nigeria, Daily Times, Leadership, just name it. I've been virtually in every newspaper that started in Nigeria today, except, of course, the bad ones. And honestly, I thought that criticizing people in government was rave. You got money from doing that. We flew around in, private jets with people who had money, and I was just sitting there thinking I was doing something right. But I wasn't, because all they were doing was using me. If you remember, I said journalists were termed as political prostitutes. And that's political prostitution, because you are always politicians. They did whatever you wanted. They gave you money. They took you places. But how do they help the country if you continue to write what they wanted? You don't. People do things either to take advantage of you or to take advantage of people you are supposed to defend, or even to take advantage of their own people. How do you stop them? You have to be a responsible citizen. And what does it mean by being a responsible citizen? I'm not saying protests are wrong, but I'm saying there is a limit to protests. I'm not saying confrontations are wrong, but I'm saying there's a limit to confrontation. But the most important thing you can do as a citizen is to contribute. Because once you contribute, you have the right to ask the guy who is in charge of the project why it is going wrong. Like today, here is one of our heroes here as students. He's a deputy governor. A lot of people you see on radio or TV who are sitting there discussing, telling you all the good things that can happen to Nigeria but never practicing them, are the same ones who come to my office who tell me they have a proposal and they want the governor to bankroll it with 10 million naira. And I ask them, I say, my position in this place is to make sure that governors are not, spendthrifts, to make sure that governors are living within the ambits of their responsibility. And the only way I can help them is by not letting you get to them. Because I used to ask some people in house, if you say he's a thief, and you want him to steal government money and give to you, how do you reconcile that? So when you hear people criticizing governors and people in power and everything, just scratch beneath the surface. What are they doing themselves? They are just criticizing so that they can be noticed. And when they are noticed, what do? They just collect money. I never realized the value of life until I had a child. I used to pick people too. Cherry pick my enemies. Look at you and say, hey, you are too tall. If we go to chase girls, you are going to get them before me, so I hate you. Things like that. Then I got a child. I was living in Sweden. By the way, I'm a journalist. I broadcast in English and Swedish. And Hausa too. That's my mother tongue. One cold winter morning in Sweden, I was just sitting with my child. My wife had traveled to the United States. I was living in Gothenburg. It was below 6 degrees Celsius. Freezing cold. I was in my house with the heater on, in my boxer shorts and a singlet and a vest. And all of a sudden, my son was rocking. He was just about 2 or 3 years old. He was rocking in a chair, and he was screaming and screaming and screaming. And I thought, the usual male thing. I gave him the pacifier, and he wasn't having it. I rocked him a little bit more. He wasn't having it. But I kept reading. I was reading, trying to put things together on my computer. Because all of a sudden, I got so fed up with it. Like a man would do, I just lifted the child with the rocking chair and ran to my car. Put him in the car, drove to the hospital, parked where the ambulances were, and took my child and ran with the rocking chair into the wards. And by the time the nurses saw me, they just came, took the child from me. Then I saw 2 of them coming, one with a shirt and another with a trouser. They were tracksuits. I didn't know I was naked at the time. Remember, I'm a Muslim. So I got a tracksuit, and in 25, 30 minutes, my child was back. He was damn quiet. And I said, hey, doctor, what's it? He said, no, you, what's it? He said, there must be something about this child that would make you, in no clothes, in this winter, drive all the way to the hospital from your address. I said, yes, I love my child. He said, yeah, I can see that. And from that day, hate died in me. I began to feel that, look, anybody you see on the streets has parents too. And they love him just the way you love yourself and the way you love your child. You can't, just because of a difference that is not even ingrained in you. I am Muslim by accident. You are Birom by accident. We could easily be the reverse. I could be Birom and Christian, you would be Hausa and Muslim, and anybody would be Igbo and whatever he wanted to be. So it's an accident of birth. When I see religious people doing their thing, I'm like, they must have learned a lot. Because they learn it. They were not born with it. Same for pastors. The key message is look at the people on the value of the things they do. Not on face value, not on the weight of their pockets, not on the kind of lives they live. Because a lot of people live fake lives, especially in Nigeria here. This is the country with over 100 universities that churns out close to 1 million educated illiterates everywhere. Even the teachers are hardly literate. I travel with only my computer, nothing more. If you want me to take the whole of Jos Market to London, I will. But I will not take any market from London to Nigeria. Because, frankly, we don't need them. You just saw statistics here that says Africa is rising. I would say Africa has risen. Look at the coup in Zimbabwe. There were no deaths. There was only a transfer of power that was systematic. One 94-year-old man with a 50-year-old beautiful woman gives power over to a 75-year-old man with a 35-year beautiful woman. Beautiful, isn't it? There's no crisis in the world except in Nigeria. It's only in Nigeria that we fight in South Africa, we fight in Congo, we fight in Uganda, we fight in Cote d'Ivoire, we fight in... Now they are pissing in our mouths in Libya. That's global conflict. There's no war that is global. The only war that is global is here. It's in your head. Clean it up. Thank you very much.